watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Streamlining India's archaic labour laws will be on top of the agenda this parliament session. The Modi government plans to bring in legislation that merges 44 labour laws under 4 categories of wages, social security, industrial safety and welfare and industrial relations. Now, the demand to modernize Indian labour laws is a long-standing one. Some laws have particularly bothered industry and those looking to start business. One of them, for example, says that if a company with more than 100 employees wants to lay off someone, government permission is required. So what can we expect from this new labour law? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Pradeep Bhargav, former chairman of CII, Abhi Ghosh, former IAS officer and ILO official, Suchita Datta, executive director of the Indian Staffing Federation, and CK Saji Narayanan, president of the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us today. Mr. Bhargav, let me start by asking you, what are your expectations from this new law? We have some details. We know 44 will be put into 4 categories, but we don't know too much beyond that. We're hoping there will be some streamlining.
Well, Tamanna, these 44 laws converging into 4 codes was an agenda of 2014 it started. So really these, from the time of conception to now possible delivery, there's been a long journey. Tripartite agreements, tripartite conversations have taken place, state governments have been consulted, standing committee of the parliament has looked at it. So it's not anything new that's coming, unless of course if the government chooses to rehash some elements of this. Fundamentally, I think the point that is coming out is in these, they're going to simplify, rationalize, and if I were to use the cliche, while it's going to improve the ease of doing business for the employer, it is also aimed at improving ease of living for the employees. And we got a flavor of it even before the laws came in the last 5 years, Tamanna, because we thought nothing was happening. There were lots of things done for the from the employer side by rationalizing 56, registration into 5, 8 labor laws, you have to file 1 returns, annual returns. And for the employees, we saw Bonus Act was enhanced, ESIC coverage was increased, maternity benefits were increased, child labor age was increased. So fundamentally, government has done something, but the big bang is going to come with these 4. And I suspect they're going to be equitable for both, because sabka saath, sabka vikas has to be done. So it can't be lopsided towards employer or employees. Both deserve a fair treatment in this.
No, absolutely. But Mr. Bhargav, if you could be more specific, when you say big bang is going to come, what is the big bang that you expect? And if you could slice that down, what are the key things that need to change? And you're right, some movement has taken place in term 1, but it has been tinkering, not the big sweeping kind of reforms that a mandate like that allowed, and a mandate like this one definitely allows.
Sure. First, pick up Social Security Code, the most powerful and I believe the most impactful. I'm getting an echo, Tamanna, but let me continue. So, So Social Security Code is going to be going all the way up to 20% of the total wages should go into the Social Security, which will cover large categories of employees, which will cover a whole lot of retirals, which take care of this. All aspects of, let's say, living. Wage code is going to bring in a minimum wage, which is going to be administered by the state, but there will be a minimum norms that a wage board will decide, which will give much higher. Today, the minimum wages are really pathetic. So we expect that this will come closer to fair wages. The occupational safety and working condition is a matter of hygiene. There are a whole lot of elements in this existing acts which really allow an employer to get away with some of the things hygiene is not taken care of. It will be certainly addressed. And finally, industrial relations, very naughty. I mean KNOTTY. In its implementation, it will be simplified so that both employer and employee can reach a resolution if and when a dispute arises. So answer to your question is yes, it will be major changes in terms of scope, in terms of depth, and also in terms of consultation.
Okay, Suchita Datta, what do you hope to see, which will essentially, what is the purpose of reviewing India's laws and sort of rebooting the labor law system? One is to allow companies to grow and expand, which will in turn increase employment and give security to employees as well. Where do you think are the key lacuna that needs to be filled?
See, Tamanna, the basic point that we start with is today we are fighting an immense battle to have a situation where there is a higher level of employment protection. Unfortunately, there is nothing called permanent anymore, and the word temporary is kind of associated in a different format. However, in the last 4 years, 5 years, the implications of the labor laws that we have been asking for, we have been really waiting for, be it the employee or the employer or the economy as a whole, to see ease of business happening. It has becoming a mandatory part of it that simplification of laws are extremely important right now. These laws have become archaic in nature because, I mean, while they have taken a larger picture into consideration when they were being formed, however, these are still 40-50 years old. Today, if I look at the forms of employment that are there are clearly 3 forms of employment. One, we are looking at the jobs which are day-to-day jobs, where we are looking at employment of 9 to 5 kind of a job. Then there we have entrepreneurs who are not only trying the digital space, the startups. There is a huge lineup for funds that are going to be coming to India because of the Startup India that initiative that we have started. Another that we are seeing a change in a large way is the gig economy. Now, gig economy is something which is happening worldwide, and it has taken up a large step in India as well. Now, there are certain things where employment is happening, but the employment can only happen properly if there is also the benefits that are coming through from a perspective of employers being able to address and bring the job security to the people who are actually today coming into the ambit of employment. Okay. So, if I were to look at it very plain and simple in 2-3 points, is clearly the need of the hour is simplification of the laws, so that the employer can provide employment which they understand, because a lot of people who are starting up today, they do not understand the cumbersome, and as my predecessor just mentioned before, that these are very naughty kind of a thing, naughty in the sense of KNOTY. Now, where we come from is very simple. We need laws that are going to be productive, we need laws that are going to be simple, and we need laws that are going to be enhancing the employability and the employment structure that we have in the country today. Temporary jobs that are coming in a big way are also a format of engaging people into the skills that are required. Skill gap is a huge challenge that we have in our country.
Okay, no, so you know what, I just want to, right, so Suchita, I'm just going to come in there, because I think we should focus on one thing at a point at a time, otherwise we go into these generalities and sort of very large picture kind of thing, which is why let me bring in Mr. Narayanan. Mr. Narayanan, let's be honest, one of the big sort of roadblocks and one of the fears that a government, even with such a big mandate, has is that if they change labor laws, trade unions and organizations such as yourself will have an impediment, they'll have a problem. Do you think there will be cooperation right now from organizations such as yourself?
For the last about 28 years,
yeah,
labor law reforms have been a very contentious issue since the advent of globalization. So, successive governments have been following a policy of curtailing the rights of the workers and creating some islands of industrial areas where there is no labor laws. So, BMS have been fighting against this for the last 28 years, and these people have made a philosophy, basic idea, that if you want industrial progress, you have to create the graveyard of workers' dreams. So, only in that you can build up a industrial empire. So, we have been fighting against it, and for the last 1.5 years we have been successful. For that purpose, we have adopted a policy of Sangarsh and Samvad. We have been fighting against the government, at the same time we have been discussing, creating dialogue with the government. So, that has been successful, and for the first time you will see in the policy document of Niti Aayog, that New India at 75, that you will find a chapter, employment and labor policy. Therefore, the first time during the last 28 years, they have identified that labor law, they have placed labor welfare at the center of labor law reforms. This is a substantial change in the attitude of the government. Now, every labor law is meant for labor welfare. This should not be forgotten. Now when we look at the new labor codes, 44 laws are being converged into 4 labor codes. We have welcomed it because even it was our demand that all the labor laws should be codified and simplified. There is our long pending demand. Even many committee reports, they also suggested this. But the problem is when you are consulting all these things, one thing it should be update, it should include the aspirations of the workers, it should include the aspirations of employers, it should be at the national interest. So all these interest of 3 partners should be taken care of. But many times one way things are going on in one direction. Anyway, there was discussion about these 4 codes, and regarding labor code on wages and labor code on social security, we have described it as historic and revolutionary, because the last worker in the country is going to be benefited by labor code on wages and labor code on social security. Now only 7% of the total working force is covered by minimum wages or social security, any kind of social security. Now that is going to be changed, and it is going to be a historical piece of legislation. So we have there was consultant on labor code and wages, and it has been sent to Parliament. Now it was pending before the Standing Committee on Labour. It has also cleared it. Now the Parliament has to pass it. But regarding social security, even though it is historic and revolutionary, there are certain provisions which are against workers. For example, ESI, PF and nearly 6 other central labour welfare schemes, they are functioning well. They should not mix up with the new social security scheme which is meant for about to the unorganized sector. Because unorganized sector means workers. Correct. Means it is about 43 crores of people.
Yeah.
Yes. 43 crores of people are coming up. So if they all come up, there will be cross subsidy. The ESA and PF fund will be given to this unorganized sector welfare schemes, and within a short period everything will be depleted. This is called cross subsidization. So that should not happen. So regarding this, there are many other objections. So all these objections should be considered and its defects should be rectified. Then it has to be sent to the Parliament. That is our stand on labour code on social security. Regarding IR code, that is Industrial Relations Code, it is from beginning to end it is anti-worker. So we are totally rejected it. It should not be taken up. OSH code, it has got many issues.
Let me know,
it is
one
not,
minute,
it
Mr. Narayanan, what in the
contract
Industrial
labor,
Revolution
journalist,
Code,
everything.
One minute, Mr. Narayanan, what in the IR code bothers you right now?
Yes. Industrial Relations Code, the government wants to curtail the selection of office bearers of trade unions. It wants to curtail right to strike. It is making restrictions on many other aspects of industrial relations. It doesn't put forward a new idea, because BMS has been putting forward that there should be a peaceful, cordial industrial relations in the country, and all the 3 partners should come together and discuss all the issues. That thing is missing in the new code. It doesn't convey philosophy, it doesn't convey a sort of a spirit of synergy. So that is missing there. So that has to be redrafted. So the workers and employers should sit together and come to a very good.
One assumes they have. One assumes they have. Let me just get in, Mr. Abhi
That is
Ghosh.
possible in the country.
Yes, Mr. Narayan, let me just get in, Mr. Abhi Ghosh, on the point that you made and many others. Now, you know, labour law by itself is a massive scope of a subject with many nitty-gritties in it. We've got you the best experts here, but we're trying to sort of slice it down to what the big challenges for this government will be. And in that context, Mr. Ghosh, considering, you know, Mr. Narayanan has put forward what his missives are before the law is passed, what do you think the biggest challenges are going to be for the NDA when they try to tinker in any way with the existing structure?
Let me start this way. You know, about this time last year, when the government introduced a new category of fixed time workers, I had written somewhere that is there any hope of big bang reforms in the labor and employment sector in the foreseeable future, or is it a case of missed opportunities? Now, the opportunity has come again, which and what an opportunity. So, we should know that this time we cannot afford to miss this opportunity. The type of mandate that the government has, the type of political will it has, and the will to carry forth the reform. One thing is very clear, there is a consensus that among the various reforms, the structural reforms, land and labor as factors of production need to be reformed very urgently for the industrialization program to succeed, for Make India to succeed, for the agrarian distress to come down. So, all these are linked, and therefore, this opportunity is I would say some God given opportunity for this country to really make a massive change. Now, having said that, I take Mr. Narayanan's point that there is need for social dialogue at every stage. We cannot afford to kind of push down any legislation at the cost of consensus. So, whether there is a need for further dialogue, further consideration of some of the issues, this has to be looked into before we really, as they say, before you rush in where angels fear to tread. So, we have to look at this aspect very clearly. I am glad that he has taken a positive approach towards the labor code on wages, which he has supported. The labor code on social security still is a work in progress. I think there are some issues which have to be sorted out. As far as the industrial, the safety and health code is concerned, there is not much disagreement on any particular issue. But coming to the industrial relations code, I think this is a very naughty, as Mr. Bhargav said, KNOTTY. It's a naughty issue, because there are many aspects which need to be looked at. For example, let us say the so-called exit policy, where they say that prior permission is required for any industry establishment to either close down or have layover or retrenchment, having more than 100 workers. Now, if we look at this provision with a little historical perspective, then what is being proposed now in the new bill is that the number, the threshold has to be increased to 300 workers, and the compensation amount is being tripled to 45 days wages for every year of service. Now, that I do not know whether the employers or the workers are agreeable to that, because if you look at, as I said, the historical perspective, that before 1976, when the amendment was brought about and Chapter 5B was introduced into the Industrial Disputes Act, the provision in the law was the same. The 300 workers, up to 300 workers, there was no need for any prior permission, and layoff, retrenchment, etc. attracted 15 days wages for every year of service. So, to increase it to 45 days of wages, I do not know whether the employers are happy with it, and whether the labor side, the trade unions will be happy with this kind of threshold being increased.
Okay, you've actually hit the nail on the head, Mr. Ghosh, and let's come to that. That's one of the key contentious sort of points which jumps out at us when we talk about labor law. And let me get Pradeep Bhargav in on it very quickly. Suggestions like these which try and draw a middle path, because remember, even with a massive mandate, no government can really afford to seem like they're anti-labor. There are always state elections to prepare for, and that's a risk no one will take. Do you think this will be one of the sticking points?
Yeah. Well, could be, but let's also try and understand life is not always win-win. There are some issues which are zero-sum game. We cannot achieve consensus on every issue. We have to take a path that is perhaps more important. Let me just bring a tamanna perspective. Just the way industry is not the top 200 BSE companies, organized labor, unionized labor is a small part of the labor workforce in this country. So labor laws should not completely come on to only that section, which in many ways is privileged considering the fact that they're organized, they have the law protecting them. I think the important point for us to understand is today permanence is one of the major things, the exit policy. Please, I want to tell you, and labor unions privately have agreed, industry itself is not sure about this permanence. We don't know what complexion we'll have, where we'll be, what will be our nature. So if I don't have balance in my bank, how can I give a post-dated check? And this is precisely, we need dignity. Namana, it's important to give dignity. That's why it's safety, social security, minimum wages, all accepted. But to say that even if the industry is packing up 100 or 300 or 500 or 50, you need to continue to doing it, and no state governments, ma'am, I've been long enough, no state government gives permission whether it's 100 or 300. They haven't been giving it because it's politically not acceptable. So for us to pretend that life is not going to change, that the lack of permanence, the permanence employment is going to be a major hindrance, we need flexibility while giving dignity to labor. So answer to your question is, yes, it will be a contentious issue. Yes, we'll have to take bold decision. And really speaking, the entire labor scene in the country, today industry is very shy of investing, because if says I invest and have 5,000 labor intensive sectors, because if business goes up and down, I can't touch them. We go into complicated, convoluted, perverted mechanism like contract labor. We have created an employment in called contractor. Because if I take my on our payrolls 240 days, he becomes or she becomes my permanent, and my business may not be. Bangladesh has a garment industry which they employ 30 to 40,000 people. Our largest garment industry employs 4,000 people.
Yeah.
China has plant which has 400,000 people.
No,
Why are we not doing it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
We need flexibility.
No, and Mr. Narayanan, I want you to come in on this, because it's a bigger picture. It's a bigger picture that everyone needs to look at. That businesses in India often are not able to grow in scale because the kind of regulations they will face once they cross the threshold is just too much effort. It's too archaic, it's too cumbersome. So they prefer to remain smaller, and then do people and do employees eventually really benefit from that?
BMS believes in a concept that nation should progress, industry should progress, and workers should progress. All these three should progress together. But any philosophy that believes that one can progress at the cost of other, that is wrong. That should not be that should not be the direction in which our labor law reform should go. Now, when the threshold is increased, what are you going to do? You are creating some jungle areas where there is no labor law applicable. If you want to increase contract labor 20 to 50, 50 up to in extra units employment up to 50 contract labor, they will be out of contract labor law. If you are raising chapter 5e coverage from 100 to 300, as already said, that means you are bringing out the law outside the purview. So if there is an issue, what should the workers do? Should they take arms and go to the streets and settle the scores in the streets? Is this the way? So every person in the country should be under the rule of law. That is a civilized norm. Nobody can say that particular area it should be out of law. So this exemption or raising the threshold, it is totally uncivilized. That is what I would say.
Okay, absolutely. It's like I said, it's a vast topic, and we've run out of time. But before we go, I would like all of our panelists to encapsulate what they hope to see very, very briefly. And we will, of course, revisit this when we have more details of what is proposed in the new law. So, Chita, I want to start with you very briefly. What do you hope to see, in one line, if you can, come from the new labour policy?
See, we have been looking at bringing the Contractual Labour Act into a forum where we can look at a national regulation policy. We have been working with the government to bring that into force. There is only 2% penetration, with almost about close to 6% only, wherein we are representing close to 1 million people through our members at this point of time. And these guys are regulated, they need to be regulated, like rightly put across by Mr. Narayanan. While contractual labor law is something that needs to be taken care of, at the same time they need to be protected, and we also are talking about protecting the employees that are there in the country. So I am completely in sync in bringing the contractual labor law into the ambit of proper labor regulation, and contractors need to come into that.
I'm afraid I'll have to leave it there.
That's my point.
I'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid. But thank you so much to all of you for coming in with your inputs. We will revisit this with all of our experts once we're clearer on what law has been proposed. Right now, it's pretty much a wish list, hoping that the NDA government, with its massive mandate, will take the plunge. Let's just remember one thing before I take a break. By the way, today is also International Day Against Child Labour. India has a slew of laws which protect children and are against child labour. But how well are they implemented? So the point with new laws is also how well they're implemented, and let's keep that in mind. We'll take a very short break, but when we come back, we're talking politics on the India development debate. Does the Congress party have a plan ahead of the next session? What is going on in West Bengal with clashes between the BJP and the TMC? Who's ahead in that perception battle? All of that on the other side.